Hi, book club members. I'm Jen,
And I'm Carrie.
and this is Warhammer 40k Book
Oh,
Club,
I
where
gotta
we
get the
read from
book
a crag.
because you don't have the
This is
book.
I don't have the book. This is episode number 140, and our book is The High Kahl's Oath, as Carrie is demonstrating, written by Gav Thorpe. This is the very first major appearance of the Leagues of Votann in the Black Library catalog. That the little interjections of oh, there's a Votann over there. No, that doesn't count. This is the first major book of this. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning, if you haven't yet read the book, definitely check it out before listening to this episode, as we're going to be talking about the book from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. As always, Carrie, did you like the book?
I did. Wasn't great. Wasn't bad. It was better than Indomitus. So it didn't read to me like a catalog. And there were parts I did get pretty invested in. And then there were parts I was like, did you have to go all Tolkien on us? But all right.
I think the answer to that question is yes. I think it's on page 65, paragraph 4, clause 2 of the Geneva Convention. All dwarven references must reference Tolkien.
I thought it was the Second Council of Nicaea, but you're sure it's in that section of the Geneva Convention?
It's one of the lesser known edicts. And like the rest of the Geneva Convention, probably put in there because of something the Canadians did. Anyways,
Checks out.
Checks out.
Mhm.
You know those Canadian authors. No respect for the dwarves. The book was okay. There were a couple parts I liked. I had a lot of complaints. I like the Leagues of Votann. I like the kin in general. I do like them. I think they're very interesting and very neat. I didn't love the book, though, for reasons I'll talk about as we go through this.
So I had the opposite. I do find the Votann, or the Leagues of Votann, the kin, sorry, interesting. I don't like them.
That's fair. One of the questions I really want to talk about is them in the 40k setting. So let's unpack that here in a bit, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about there. But as always, what parts stood out to you, Carrie?
Probably the parts that stood out to me the most, aside from the obvious Lord of the Rings, was the how Gav Thorpe wrote what the humans sound like to them. Because
I liked that.
I would have to read it out loud and be like, "What? Wait, what are they saying?"
So I listened to the audiobook because diamond painting exists. I listened to the audiobook, and the female narrator did a really good job with that. She made them all kind of sound vaguely Eastern European, not Russian, but vaguely Eastern European, very clipped vowels, very a drawl in the back of the throat, so that it was English, but very foreign sounding, and you really had to okay, wait, what are they saying? She did a really good job. The narration in this book was very good, and that part in particular I really did like.
I thought it was a great narrative device
Agreed
that he included. Honestly, so not a whole lot stood out to me, just because I had to do a lot of studying. Put it that way. I had a page in the Lexicanum. Thank you, Lexicanum writers. Opened whenever we get to a new term. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Thank you for helping me understand. Because once I understood what the Votann are, because I just kept calling them the Votann, then I figured out very quickly that was not the case. It just kind of made me not like them as a collective. I mean, I was like, oh, you guys really do have abominable intelligence working.
Oh yeah. No, you don't just have AI.
No,
you worship a long dead AI.
Well, I mean, the Votann are AI, right? I mean, they're just data cores that talk every now and then. Actually, you know what? I just remembered. Again, I wish I'd written this down. When they get messages from the Votann, it says 3. I was just like, Minority Report, anyone?
Okay, which by the way,
easily
one of the most underrated science fiction movies. It's a great murder mystery. It's a great everything about it. Brilliant. But yes, I had the same thought. And similarly, one of the things I really did like was the concept that the Grimnar interpret what they say. And so
Very like
I like the
astropathic
yeah,
ideas.
but also like, oh, that's an interesting system, right? These whatever they call it, the Votann, right? Our leaders spit out messages to us, which if it's anything like modern day AI is probably predictive, right? Predictive responses based on available information. Fine. But then the idea that you have people who are interpreting what it means based on, and like when you watched Jordaki really going through, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? That's an interesting way to like, boy, that gives them a lot of power, doesn't it? It's very similar to the. I'm not saying it's dissimilar from the Imperials, right, where you have the church
Yeah.
interpreting, right, what the God Emperor wants us to do. It was just it's an interesting little facet of their society that I really liked.
It also reminded me of the Captain Marvel movie.
Very similar.
Who? Oh my God, what was that alien race? The Kree.
Mm-hmm.
The Kree, because they basically had an AI
Mm-hmm.
that was running them. So it kind of I mean, so it's like that with Minority Report. It's like we're just going to have some science fiction fun here, folks. So it was,
I did like along those lines. I did like that their society feels like a combination of the Trill and Gattaca, where there's and they're not literally the Trill because they don't have like the symbiote living inside of them, but this idea that like the shared history gets uploaded and then they all kind of can reference that back and they all know it, but then they're also breeding, it's cloning
they're cloning.
specifically for traits. And very interesting concept.
Yeah, it was just the whole idea of cloning, then the idea of the Iron Kid. I'm like, you know what? Everyone like heard me talk about this many, many times. Like any idea of like sentient robots freaks me out. Like in Mass Effect, for example, when Edie, the ship's AI, becomes that robot, I was like, no, 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 no. I do not like this at all. Even worse when Joker was like, I think I like her. What? That's not real. That's not a thing. And so some of this, when they would get like super close, like, well, you guys don't mate anyway. I guess it doesn't really matter. But it just seems to me, it's creepy. It's too close. It's like almost what the Mechanicus would do if they could.
It's okay. So for everyone who's really active in the meme culture for Warhammer 40k, what are the Mechanicus known for with toasters?
They like them a lot.
Yeah. It yeah, much as there is implications that the Mechanicus want to do the Devil's Tango with toasters, I feel like Mirton and Lutar's relationship was, well, I wouldn't say it was entirely kosher.
I don't honestly the way they were talking about being, clone skin and uh their emotional feelings, like I don't think they have any sexual feelings one way or the other. It's more of an
No, but there was
emotional thing.
definitely,
It's like,
yes, 100% an emotional
kind of, I'm just
romance
going to throw
type
out
thing.
another science fiction reference here. It's kind of like the whole idea of how they had sex in Demolition Man.
Oh, yes. Very much so. Yes, very much so. Like that. I have a feeling she and Lutar definitely did that. I liked that was another thing that stood out to me. I really did like their relationship. I thought it was sweet, but also a little odd.
Yep.
A little odd.
Like I actually thought he
Yeah.
was like a dreadnought for a while.
Okay, in the beginning, I kind of thought he was too. I was like, oh, so there's like like he's mechanical and he's entirely
Yeah.
mechanical, but there's like a brain in there. There's
Yeah.
like an actual
Uh-huh.
kindred
Until I
brain.
looked up what the Ironkin was, and I was like, "Oh, never mind. No, no,
No.
no."
It was actually the dinner party scene where she's like, they cannot find out what you are. They will lose their minds. Which, by the way, I think I've just decided that the Warhammer 40k universe just needs more dinner parties.
This is true.
The Wraithbone Phoenix, great dinner party, right? Obviously, Kazarkin is the best dinner party.
The Kazarkin is the
Um,
best dinner party.
but this was a pretty good dinner party.
I especially loved when she was just like, "We've been very nice to you. We saved you, and you're not even going to pay us for it. That kind of
And the
cracks
lady's
me
like,
up.
that was common decency. Oh, honey. I'm sorry, did you miss that the most technically advanced strain of humanity, definitely abhuman, but
Mhm.
the most technologically advanced are also petty AF? It's all about money, my friend. They're dwarves. They like their money.
Yeah, this is
Talk
known.
about Mirton a
This is
little bit.
known about dwarves and money, and
This is
they likes to get paid.
They do. Yes, this is all. So one of my husband's favorite campaigns from Total Warhammer, there was one where you're playing as the dwarves, where all of a sudden, as one of the dwarves, you can go and raid. Your party can go and raid this Imperial settlement. Keep in mind, the Imperials are your allies
Got it.
because I think it was like 200 years previous, there was a trade agreement, and the humans shorted the dwarves by 1 copper. And you can go extract your revenge to get that 1 copper back.
Well, we got to have the books balance.
I mean, obviously, yes. Like, they're like the IRS on steroids. I love them.
I mean, as for personalities like that, I really did enjoy that. Like, I enjoyed that. I found that very funny. I laughed a lot at Lecky with what he was going through.
We're going to talk more about that.
And
Let's talk about
right,
Mirton real quick, though.
sure.
Was she a compelling character? Did you like her?
Okay, so I have to say at first I was worried that we're going to have another one of these whiny women who get pouty that they're not getting their way with something, because we've seen that way too much. And I was honestly thrilled to watch her kind of morph from that and realize I'm not getting my way, but this is the will of the Votann, and I have to fulfill my oath as the new High Kahl. So I liked that she went through that kind of redemption arc in a way.
Agreed 100%. This is not the refusal of the call, right? So if you're familiar with the hero's journey, there's always that refusal of the call. This is different. They've been doing this a lot with female characters. I mean like pop culture in general for like over the past like 6 or 7 years, where it's not the refusal of the call. It's pouting at the call, right?
Right, right.
And like, I don't want to do that. I want to go do what I want to do. And I was with you. For like the first third of the book, I was like, this fucking bitch. And then she starts to really, as soon as she goes on the previous Kahl's quest, I was like, yeah, here we go. But then once she's on the quest and she starts to learn the true meaning of Christmas. I did like it. I liked her. And by the end of the book, I liked her. Now, having said that, the fact that Orthan was there, maybe that isn't just how the Kahl do.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, girl, you need to be leading your people.
We still don't know what was said to him, why he went there.
Well, yeah, to find the other Votann, the missing Votann.
I guess, but he wasn't even sure what he was looking for. Like, he didn't even get to the Fane.
No, he was just told to go and find this. Well, maybe he was told specifically, we think there's another Votann no doubt there. But I think he was told, go find this thing. And yeah, he never even got in there. I like her. I like the way she treated the people around her. I thought she was very consistent with the way she treated people. Obviously, she was a little bit keen on Lothar, but they definitely, I liked that everybody was treated equally around her. She was kind of shitty to everybody, but then she could also be she could have moments of nice and kindness too. She's very stubborn and dwarf-like.
I liked it when Firtor, is that how they pronounced it, called her a stone-faced hag and she laughed.
I like how direct they are as a people in general.
That's true. There is no mincing words.
Oh, no. They'll just say it. I didn't love the scene when they had to break down the whole, this is why you were chosen as the High Kahl, and it really is you. I did not like that whole scene because I think we were starting to put that together anyway, so having to have it spelled out, and I didn't like that she needed to have it spelled out to her either. Like, girl.
Yeah.
You clearly are fitting this mold.
I understood it. maybe I honestly, I think she was someone who did need to have that, to be honest, because she just wants to go out on her adventures all the time. And maybe she did need to hear that, okay, this was not a mistake. I was actually picked by the Votann, not by the council. Or like an Orthanar's will or whatever, right? So I didn't like it, but I understood it.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fair. I didn't love it. I didn't actually love that whole thing of like the weighing piece.
So
God,
that
I felt like
reminded me,
stalling for time.
again, like Tolkien here, that reminded me of when Pippin and Merry were talking to the Ents, and the Ents had to have their discussion.
Mm-hmm. It felt like if it were a movie, I would flat out say it was padding the runtime. Like literally stalling for time. God, I did not like that one. However, that does bridge us nicely into what did you think of her crew in general?
Her crew.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, who was that one chick I liked? I can't remember her name. Crap. There was like several people like actually on her ship that like I did like Feartor. I thought he was funny. And though he's not technically like on her crew. I actually did like the Voidmaster.
Yes. I liked the Voidmaster. I liked Jordaki a lot.
Oh,
Actually,
yes.
Jordaki really
Jordaki was probably
rubbed
one of
me
my
the wrong way in the
favorites.
beginning, but at the end, she was one of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
I like the idea that she's kind of this upstart who wants to learn and wants to learn the proper ways and learn more, but she also wants to experience life
Right.
and get her experience that way. And obviously, that path led her down a fortuitous road.
To say the least.
Yeah.
You know, the whole honestly, like every time they would chant opportunity cracked me up. It's like, man, you guys are pirates, right? It's just like little,
Pretty much.
maybe not pirates, not the right word, because they're just out for salvage.
They're buccaneers, which makes it feel like there's less, theft and more just
I mean, they don't steal,
adventure.
they just salvage.
It's kind of implied with the whole Imperial pigeon scene.
I mean, yeah, that is true. Oh my God, that was so funny. She's like, get that out of here. They're like, what?
When he comes over, he's like, I need your cape. That was pretty funny. To hide the Aquila, and he's just like, oh my God, now they're just going to think we hang capes over doorways. Why not? I mean, why not?
And then when they actually were doing the sign of the Aquila, and he's like, see?
Like, oh, they do it. They do it.
Oh my God, she called it a pigeon. Like, that's amazing.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. There was a lot of humor in that scene. Again, dinner parties are the best.
But I mean, salvagers' rights, right? We came
Totally.
across it first.
Oh, totally. We came across it. You weren't using it. We'll sell it back to you. Again, the fact that
I mean, really,
everything they do.
Who else is crazy enough to go salvage a bioship?
Oh my God.
The Imperials would just burn it out of the sky.
To be fair, yes. I do like the idea that they recognize the value in everything. Everything's got a price. Now, having said that, to whom are you selling stuff from a bioship? Like, that's one thing where I was like,
get paid.
Like, some things I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you could have left that one to rot in the. We could have left that one to rot. I'm just throwing that out there. That one was, I don't know about that one. What did you think of Kindred? So this is our first, okay, so, and I know you and I both had to do a lot of research. What did you think of Kindred society in general? Like, what do we think of the Kindred?
To me, typical dwarves, like everything I've read, like in, like, I know we keep referencing this, but like Dragon Age, the Dwarven Society of Dragon Age. You know, even like the first game when you had to go down there and you had to pick a leader, and you're dealing with everybody's petty little squabbles, and they're talking about the merchant guilds, and you know, being part of the cartel, and but there's this guild who doesn't talk to this guild, and it just is like, oh, this seems like typical dwarf, typical dwarf culture. We're just, you know, we have to sit here and do all these petitions. Like, I'm here about a debt. Like, oh my God, who's not here about a debt? Anybody?
Everybody who's not here for a debt, stand up. Like 2 people stand up. Um, I agree. I did like that. I really like the idea of it. It doesn't. I mean, it's not. If you break it down, it's not too dissimilar from the Imperium, right? There's all these little factions, and they all have their rules, and they all have their little ways that they interact with one another. And some people are friendly, and some people are just kind of like, we're kind of friendly. Um, but I did like that it is very. It all comes down to money and service. What can you do for us? And I liked. I think it's a more honest, perfunctory, but also more honest approach to a society.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what we can do for one another.
Very transactional.
Very transactional, literally transactional. And it actually, so for a bit there, in the beginning, like when Lecky first stands up and he's talking, I was like, oh man, like, I don't even have the history to understand if I should care about this. Like when she basically is like, no, you need to wait because I want to hear from the champion. Is that a slight? Like, did she just make a oh snap? Like, was my reaction supposed to be oh snap? So similar to you, thank God for the internet and thank God for people who talk more about this. Then like once you start to break down, you're like, oh, okay, I do understand this. And as they went more into what the guild does, okay, I understand
I actually
now.
did not research what the guild does.
Well, when they were talking about it in the book, when they were talking about like, look, you have all of this material of ours and this is not okay. And okay. Oh, and you have this ring of ours that we gave you. A lot of stuff that I was like, okay, I'm starting to see like the scales. I'm starting to see the scale.
Petty.
So petty.
So petty.
So, well, seemingly, but then also, like, again, at least
Like,
it's honest.
Like, you don't, you won't talk with us. You don't know what we want because you're the new High Kahl. You don't know what the old High Kahl had to say, and then you just left. And so, just because of that, we're just going to turn off your defense systems. Like, that's such a level of petty. Like,
oh, it's such a level petty. And the thing that was amazing is I was like, oh man,
like,
they're gonna be
crap. Like, this was just this was a scare tactic. It wasn't to actually hurt anybody.
Well, yes, but I do like that when it happens, the people on the mothership are basically like, turn them back on.
Like, this isn't funny anymore. We get your point.
But they're not like furious. They're just more like irritated. Like, okay, fair play, but now you need to turn them back on. Okay, but then we have to settle our debt. Yes, absolutely. Like, I would have expected a little bit more of a rise. It was more just like irritation. Like,
could have 100% been settled when she got back. Just throwing that out there.
Actually, they don't really settle that at all. Like,
I'm assuming
like obviously they turned the shields back on.
I'm assuming when she got back, she's like, here's the ring. There you go.
Right. But
or paid them for
it. Yeah. Maybe, I guess. That didn't really get a satisfying. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just assume they're right, especially since it wouldn't have bothered me so much if it hadn't been such a thing, like with them turning off the shields and everything. That made it a little like, okay, now this is actually a big deal.
They turned them back
in
on.
A big event. I liked the whole idea of the Grimnir. They don't use the warp. They don't use rune magic like the fantasy dwarves do, but it's something in between there. It's not quite. I also like the idea that they have a lesser presence in the warp, not a null presence, but a lesser presence, probably because they're clones. They're not the orcs. And the way that they described the warp in general was very interesting as well.
Yeah, again, it's just a different perspective, especially from those who aren't psychically attuned. And really, the Grimnir are not psychically attuned, really, either. It's a very weird... Because I wonder about the orcs, right? What about the weird boys? How does the warp affect them? Or does it not?
It doesn't. Well, it does and doesn't. Like, I always get the impression that the weird boys are kind of like lightning rods. Like, they can catch that warp energy, but the fact that some of them just straight up explode sometimes, it's almost like the warp is like, there's nothing in here, and you're too dumb to figure out how to use me. Like, yes, and I'm making the warp kind of sentient in this case, but they remind me more of like, yeah, like lightning rods. Like, they can catch that lightning. But that's about it. It wasn't trying to catch it. It just did.
It also kind of goes back to, like, about the whole idea about having souls, right?
Right.
These are clones. Do they really have souls? Probably not, because they just go back into the Votann. Let's go back into the database.
Which makes you wonder. Makes you wonder a little bit about the Krieg.
I thought about that a lot, actually.
I did too. But I was like, because I was thinking about that with I liked the way they described the skeins that they chose from, right? Which clone skeins they chose from. And I liked the idea that when they were talking about her and they were like, oh God, this is one of the super stubborn ones. It's like, first off, I love the idea that you guys prioritize that. Of like, well, I mean, you're dwarves, so you're all really stubborn as is. But they prioritize for the extra stubborn ones. It reminded me very much of like the Space Wolves. And how they always have that trickster or that like naysayer person that they like. They like to keep that person in there to keep them in check. I like the idea that they have these super stubborn ass people because they'll go off and do great things. Or get killed and then it's a null entity.
But then I liked how the Voidmaster was like, about the fine line between steadfastness and stubbornness. I was like, I like that.
I really liked that as well. I liked all of that, but then it did get me thinking. I was like, and I wonder if, and then it made me wonder if I like the idea that they choose for traits, and so you could end up with like a whole bunch of different things. I don't think I think the Krieg are just Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V.
I think so too.
They could learn a lot from the Votann or the Kindred, as is like, I think is what I'm saying here. Like, oh, that one was particularly brave. Get that one.
It's weird because they keep saying that they were cloned, but I keep wondering, like, are you guys cloned or are you just genetically created?
I think they're genetically created. And because it didn't sound like they were, like, it didn't sound like Mirton will die someday and we will make another Mirton. It sounds like we'll take parts of Mirton and we'll take parts of Jordaki and we'll take parts of this dude and that dude and this woman, and then we'll all combine them into one person. And look, this is a new person. So it sounds like they're more genetically, again, that's why I was mentioning, all I could think of for a lot of it was Gattaca.
See, I've never seen Gattaca, so what I thought instead actually was how they created Kryptonians according to the lore in Man of Steel.
Oh, right. Yeah, so okay, speaking of underrated movies, Gattaca is one of those movies that came out in the 90s, and I think it's because it had Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke in it. Nobody really took it seriously. Really an underrated and very ahead of its time. The whole concept is that people they genetically enhance and craft people, right? And this one character,
the trailers, and I remember wanting to see it, and then it felt like it was like in and out of the theaters before I could even go see it.
Right. And there becomes a caste system, essentially. People who are superiorly genetically modified, people who are like mid-level, and then people who are just born naturally, no modification.
Ew.
And those people are obviously, yeah, exactly. They're the casteless type of people. If we talk about, again, going back to the Dragon Age castes.
Right.
It, very, very interesting piece of it. But I do like the idea that, trying to banish the phrase from my vocabulary since it got pointed out. But it's a neat way to run a society of this. Well, we just kind of mix it all up and breed what we think is going to be a good thing, right? It feels very experimental too. Like,
let's get a little bit of this, put it all in the test tube, shake it all up. Let's see what we got.
Like, I'm not saying it's straight up MK Ultra, but it's like MK Ultra-esque, like adjacent of like social engineering at a top level. Very interesting. Really liked that portion of it. But I mean, the whole Grimnir concept, there was so much stuff that he threw out in this book that I'm like, this is really cool and I like it. But here's my $62,000 question for you. Do they fit in the grimdark future?
That I was wondering that myself while reading. I was like, this is very interesting. This is a very interesting way to get the typical stereotype of the dwarves to fit in here. I'm not sure it works, but it's interesting.
I feel like if you put the Tau and the Kindred in a different science fiction universe, it would work. Like, I'm going to keep it real with you. That is part of why I don't love the Tau, is I always do feel like the Tau exist in a different space. And I understand, before somebody says this, I understand that's what makes them unique, and that's their flavor text, is that they do feel very different and unique from everything else existing in the grimdark future. But then now that we have the Kindred, like the Kindred they almost feel like it feels like there's something from like Warhammer 25k. Like maybe right after the Dark Age of technology, or maybe even just like at the beginning of the Dark Age of technology. You're worshipping an AI, for fuck's sake.
That they keep from the Imperials. Otherwise, the Imperial would be like, that's it. You guys have to go. We're going to eradicate all of you. We don't care that you came from Earth the way that we did. Just forget it. I mean,
I did love that scene in the dinner party, though. And the guy was just like, oh, yeah, it's a magic space being that gives all the technology. And the priest was just like, bah! And they talk about how it gets more and more agitated while it's talking to him.
I thought that
you
was
couldn't
funny.
hold it in for one dinner, huh? You couldn't hold it in for one dinner.
You just don't go insulting other people's religions at dinner. That's what Thanksgiving is for. God.
We avoid religion and politics. Stick to the weather.
Lovely day out in the void, isn't it?
Exactly that. Exactly that.
The stars are particularly bright this evening.
That warp, am I right?
Right. Oh, we got rid of those cursed ones, am I right? Oh, some good shooting, Tex.
I did like that they called them the cursed ones. I thought that was actually a pretty neat little flavor text there.
Okay, so it took me forever to figure out what they meant by the cursed ones. So I was just like, I was going through like, all right, talking about the Eldari. Are they talking about the Necrons?
When are we talking about the Drakari here? What are we talking about here?
Like I was thinking,
there's a lot of cursed beings in the 40k universe.
Like the Necrons, like I could see that being cursed. That makes sense to me because they are kind of cursed. But it wasn't until they boarded the hold, I was like, oh, okay. And then when they said there was a cursed space marine, I'm like, okay, so I am right in my thinking here. But that's funny.
It's a really fun way for them to look at it, especially since they're kind of a lesser entity in the warp, that they're just like, yeah, those guys are just cursed, man.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. No, but even then it felt like they were like, oh, yeah, these guys are different, aren't they? Like they're calling them cursed. That's not chaos. Like even I think in the couple of books that we've read at the Tau, they even refers to them as chaos space marines or chaos cultists. Yeah. Like they recognize this. They don't really understand it, and they're not really, necessarily down with it, but they recognize what it is. Like them even having a different name for them, they feel very removed.
Well, but they have been on purpose, right? Because they even talk about how they've been out in this, they said the far space, this area of space. They've been keeping away from the Imperials because they don't want to deal with them. I get that, because they kind of have a nasty habit of eradicating Xenos. It's a thing. It is known.
And they don't love abhumans either. So you're an abhuman and we don't love you either. I did like when they called that out, particularly when she was just like, yeah, half the Imperials would just have us killed because we're not human enough for them. We're a different strain.
Or they'd have us working in some sort of mines or something, right? That's what they did with the Ogrins, and, ratlings are snipers or whatever. So, expendable things because nobody cares.
They would have found a distastefully expendable use for you.
Exactly. But at the same time, so yeah, it seemed weird to have them in there, but I think they do have their own little, I think they do have a place, especially with like the snobs of the Eldari, the space, the robot zombies. You got the fish, the fish aliens of the Tau, the orcs. I think it's an interesting idea of having this race of like super technological beings that are trying to just keep to themselves because they just want to make a tidy profit.
Pretty much. Although, okay, for those people who are old school World of Warcraft fans, when the Burning Crusade expansion came out, so I was super into the Warcraft lore for a long time there. There was the planet where the orcs came from, which was called Draenor. And there was this race of people. We're just going with this, okay? There's this race of people. They were all corrupted and they turned into blah, 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 blah. It was terrible, right? Well, then they released this Burning Crusade expansion. And they released a new alliance race called the Draenei. Record scratch. Sorry, what? Oh, yeah. No, these were the people who escaped off of Draenor before everything went corrupt and bad. Wait, I'm sorry. What? How has that happened? Well, they've kind of been off on a spaceship for a while. They've been off on a plot device because we now need to add something to this. The Kindred are giving Draenei. It does, and I know that that's exactly what it is, right? They wanted to bring dwarves into the 40k universe, and I totally am down with that.
Right. I mean, there already are the elves.
Bit of a hard pill.
They're the elves, right? So
yeah, and we basically have halflings with the ratlings, and we have ogres with the ogren. I'm here for it, and I get it. And again, I'm interested in the concept, but it does feel a little ham-fisted that right in there.
Well, what are they going to do? Bring another Primarch back to life?
And then promptly not write about him in the Black Library for 2 years? What? I'm not bitter. You are.
I mean, it's the perfect time just to add in a whole new race into the 40k.
And a race that just feels so at odds. I mean, they have AI people who walk among them, the Ironkin, they worship data cores, which are basically these big AIs.
I mean, don't you worship your computer? Come on.
I mean, with the amount of time that I spend on it for work, you would think that I did. Like an alien watching would be like, damn, she really loves this thing. Like, I assure you I do not. Like, let me just assure you, I am quite miserable here. I actually love my job, but the idea, I don't know, they feel weird to me in the 40k universe. I'm still kind of like, I just don't know if this works. I mean, I'm gonna read them and I'm here for it, but let me ask you this. This book had a lot going on in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot going on. Did it all blend into one cohesive narrative for you?
I thought so. It did. I mean, it did for me. Like in the end, I was like, okay, I'm satisfied.
Didn't love it. It very much felt like. So this is Gav Thorpe's biggest strength, and it's his biggest strength, but it's also, I think, one of his weaker spots is that he is very good at writing about the lore. It came across as very dry in some points. And in other parts, oh man, it did not blend together to me. I'm going to go ahead and ask right now, what was the point of the invasion of the home ship?
Oh, because the movie had to happen.
That's exactly what it was. I really didn't care. Like, I got to the point when they would go back to what was going on in the home ship. I was like, I don't care. Like, the Imperials show up and they're like, hey, we're here to help.
I kind of like the Imperials showing up. I was like, oh, look, it's all nice and tied together. Like, they were probably chasing the cursed ones.
Yeah, probably were, honestly.
And we're just like, hey, more of you guys. We can help you out.
But what did they do? Like, they show up and they're like, we're here to help. And the next scene, they're battling cursed space marines in the homeworld. And I'm like, what did the Imperials do? Because everything's looking pretty dire here. I guess they all died, I guess?
They were taking care of the other ships. Because they talked about earlier about the boarding, that the boarding party was already on its way by the time the Imperials showed up.
Yeah, but just, I don't know. It felt like hey, remember those guys? Yeah, they came back. And that's a nice note. Like, it felt like an attempt to wrap it up. I just didn't care about the home. And they don't really wrap up the invasion of the home ship. Like, it's implied that it all goes fine in the end, but I didn't really understand what purpose it served to the greater narrative. The whole thing in the beginning with the Tyranids, I didn't really understand what that had to do with the narrative either.
Think of someone besides himself, because remember he put his ship in direct the torpedoes.
I did like when that happened, yes.
To protect them.
Right, but what does that have to do with Myrton's story?
I don't really see this much as Myrton's story as it is let's introduce to you the Kindred and their society as we bring them into the Warhammer 40k universe.
Sure.
Plus, we had, we had to go through, everything going on with Irkind. I don't know how they pronounced it in the audiobook. We had to go through all that stuff, learn about. I laughed so hard when he got the message from the guild, and they're like, "Everything's fine. Turn it back on. No big deal." It's like, you guys have not a clue, or they do, and they just don't care.
Honestly, that could be.
Yeah.
That could be what it is. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't love it. It felt like a bit of a distraction. I guess at the end I was just like, what was the point of this? But it felt like more like, again, it felt like Gav Thorpe's attempt to explain. So like the whole thing with the Tyranids in the beginning, didn't care, didn't really fit the rest of the narrative, other than to just be like, okay, so this is how they look at the Tyranids, and this is how they look at Chaos Space Marines, right? Which the Tyranids being so repulsive to them makes a lot of sense, right? Because
Yes.
their whole thing is that they're gene crafted, and there's like a craftsmanship here, and the Tyranids don't appreciate that shit.
I know. I thought I kind of like that they called the Tyranids the Bane, because I'm like, you guys are just the exact antithesis. Because
Exactly.
like, because when they die, any knowledge they get goes back to their version of your data cores. Let's be real. They're just a more disgusting version of you guys, and all they want to do is just eat everything. That's really all they want to do. They just want to eat everything. We should just let them just come and eat everything. But
it does, and I love the name for it. I think the name is great, and it makes total sense. Totally understand the idea. They are the antithesis of them, right? And
kind of like the
it really
orcs
reminds
are
me
to the Necrons, right?
Right. Going back to the whole petty thing, like, okay, so years ago when my daughter was like 5, my father and his wife decided they wanted to celebrate, and they took us out to this really expensive steak restaurant where a 5-year-old ordered the chicken fingers, of course, and I was like, we're at a 5-star steakhouse, and you brought a 5-year-old? It was so kind of them, and it was sweet, and she had a good time. However, it was just kind of wasted because she doesn't appreciate what we're about to have in this beautiful, gorgeous meal, right? I really did feel like that was the whole rub with the Tyranids. Is it's not only that you're denying this person's genetic information and their memories and everything to our data cores, it's you don't appreciate the craftsmanship that went into that. Like there was this undercurrent of like, oh, they don't even understand. Are they eating a fine steak or are they eating a can of Spam? They don't care.
No, they don't.
They really don't. But I was like, oh, okay, now we're doing that, huh? Oh, okay, now we're meeting the Imperials. Oh, okay, now we're going back and seeing how the Kahl is supposed to run their. Oh, okay, no, wait, no, now we're going on this quest. Oh, okay, now we're dealing with the orcs. Oh my gosh, now the homeworld's getting invaded. It just felt like blah, 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 all of this stuff. To me, it just read very dry and very disjointed. That was just my take on it, though.
I mean, to me, it came across as it was an attempt to be a story about Mertun, but then it was like, no, this is actually a story about let's introduce the Orc Society to Warhammer 40k, and that's what I think.
The Kin Society.
Sorry, yes, the Kin Society.
Definitely not the Orc Society.
Yeah, sorry, wrong Xenos. But because I think we saw this with Indomitus as well. Right, with introducing all the way that the Necrons were coming in, it was, although to me, honestly, that whole book was just boring. Like I was very disappointed in Gav Thorpe with that. And it read we talked about it, how it read like a model catalog. Look at all these new figures that we're introducing. It was kind of like he wrote a campaign for one of the codexes, and they're like, "Can you turn this and make this a novel too?" And that's kind of what it felt like. And I feel like he kind of got the same task maybe with this, which is why he was introducing like all these, with all the different, terminology and everything in it. It just, to me, it wasn't as bad as Indomitus was. And I thought he did put together a nice story of a day in the life of what it's like being part of the dwarves and their society. So to me, this was a stepping off piece, and now other authors can come in and take what he started here and move forward with the Kin.
Brings me to my final question.
Yeah.
Do we want more Kindred?
It depends, I guess, on how they're used, I suppose. Like, I really wasn't a fan of how they were brought in the Last Dawn of Fire book. Because I was just like, mainly because
Which is handled in a very, as you do.
well, it was also put in as a, remember this? We introduced this. Oh, hi. We introduced this. See, we haven't forgotten about them. They're still here. It's all good. So yeah, just it was just such a throwaway thing, and it didn't even really offer anything to the story. So I think it really just does depend on how they. Now, if they kind of take this and make books about them, like kind of what they've done with the Tau, I'm all for it. Maybe I don't exactly like them or anything, but I find them interesting.
Agree. And I do like the idea. This one, the one thing I will give this is that this did feel like it was giving like a, okay, this is going to be what the central thing is for the Kindred. So as we have these other books, not every book is going to be about them searching for this missing Votann, but that's really what drives them as a society right now. Is they are
Treasure
trying to
hunters.
find, exactly, they're treasure hunters, but they're also trying to find one of their missing gods. God adjacent thing. They're missing Votann. They're trying to find this thing. So they essentially have like a quest along with their treasure hunting and stuff. So I absolutely would love to have another book about the Votann. I would love to have another one, as you said, very similar to like the Tau books. Like, let's delve a little bit more into how their society works, but let's have these little side adventures. Like, I don't necessarily know that I'm eager to see another Mirton book,
Right.
but I would like to see other characters take the lead in. And I think after all of my smack talking about how I feel like they're kind of weirdly inserted into the universe, I still like them. I would still like to see more.
Yeah, because I think as time goes on, we'll see them fit in more and more and more as time goes on.
I think you're right. I think they'll start to fold in a little bit more and make more sense within the whole ecosphere of the
Right.
40k universe. I would be excited for more of them.
I think Robbie Bobby would be happy to come to some sort of agreement. We can make this profitable for both of us.
Right, like you guys have a very clear use.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to rush to our aid and help us just for the,
For
kind of the
funsies.
kindness of your heart, but this could be mutually beneficial to both of us.
Yep.
Right? Like the whole thing with Mirton being like, you know what, we're going to save them because maybe they'll realize that we're useful and we are really good. Which I like that idea. Again, I'm here for it. I'm curious for more. Don't know that I want another Gav Thorpe book about the Kindred, but
we haven't really had a race in the 40k that is like this whole idea of Jedi mind tricks don't work on me, only money. Like we haven't had anything like that, so this is kind of fun. I mean,
you know what? Exactly. Again, they're a very honest race. Like we don't care about your machine god. We don't care about your god emperor.
mm-hmm.
We don't care about your petty squabbles, what we view as petty squabbles with like the chaos people. We just want money. That's all it comes down to, is how much can you pay us? Which, okay, at least that's fair and honest, and we're not going to like help you and then all of a sudden find out at the end of this whole thing, and by the way, you've now signed up to help us 6 other times. No, just no. Here's money. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No
very
what the
transactional.
Inquisition thinks of them. Like, do you think that the Inquisition is just enormously frustrated by them?
Probably.
It's like, what do you mean there's no political favors here? It's just money. It's boring.
Like they really can't. They can't even buy their way in, because like they can give them money, but then they'd be like, but for what? Like we're about exchange of services. Us keeping quiet about this, okay, that's fine until somebody else comes along and pays us more money.
Right. Which actually, I guess, again, just being honest, right? That would mark them as a pretty clear threat. Like, yeah, we're not paying these guys off because there's just not enough money in the world, in the universe.
I think honestly it depends on which Inquisitor happens upon them that day, what they're feeling.
I imagine their lack of worshiping the God Emperor would also be very, in addition to being abhumans, I would imagine that that
like
whole
what if
piece.
Kotias came across them?
Jesus.
I mean,
it would be a stilted conversation.
Yeah. to say the least.
To say the least. Yeah. So I want more. I do want more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be inundated with it though.
No.
Like a tasteful amount of the Kindred.
Yes, we don't need to have like 50 books this year
Yeah.
about them, but maybe another one this year wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah. I wouldn't complain. I don't like that. We're going to juxtapose a nice book about a clean, chaosless, most part race with the opposite of that. As our next book
with this guy
is Eidolon. So we are actually going to be jumping a little bit into the Horus Heresy era, since this is the Horus Heresy character. This character series brings us back to the Horus Heresy, but Eidolon, the Arak Hammer by Mark Collins. I know that everybody on this podcast was really wondering what old Eidolon was up to.
I know I haven't, because I never liked the guy. I kind of wish that when Fulgrim punched his head off, it stayed off. Actually, that was probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole Horus Heresy, when Fulgrim punches his head off, because I thought that was just hysterical.
More so than when Karn beats the shit out of Erebus?
I said one of my favorite. I didn't say my absolute
that's
favorite.
That's fair. All I can think of is soap. We cut her head off. I looked it up. Sew it back on. Yeah,
that's literally what he did. He sewed it back on.
Literally what he did. I struggle. This is going to be a little bit of a struggle with me because, I'm not huge into the Emperor's Children. However, we made a commitment that we were going to read this character series, and by God,
yep.
These books have also, on occasion, the fact that Luther exists makes me want to keep reading these books. Because what if it's the next Luther?
I doubt it.
Okay, I didn't say that it was going to be. I'm saying what if. Hope springs eternal over here, my dear.
Okay, I mean, possibly. I mean, that would actually crack me up if it was something like...
We both read it, we're like, oh, this was amazing.
It's like, oh my God, we really like Eidolon. Well, I don't think I'll like Eidolon after this. I didn't like him through the entire Horus Heresy.
I mean, again, I don't like the Emperor's Children, so it's not too much of a surprise for me to say I didn't like them.
Yeah, but you don't like the Dark Angels either, and you liked Luther.
Luther won me over in more ways than one.
I mean, at least kind of like Fulgrim. Well, like pre-heresy Fulgrim. Felt bad for Fulgrim most of the time, but this guy I never did. Never did. Mainly because of how he treated Saul Tarvitz, so...
Because everyone likes Saul.
Because he's the best Emperor's Children that ever existed.
I don't remember which book it is. It's not the End and the Death, but one of the Siege of Terra books. There's a really great scene with a Fulgrim that actually made me feel bad for Fulgrim, except that he had already ascended into a snake form, but then he, like, for the first time ascends into snake form when he's... And then, anyways, I think it was one of the ones written by Dan Abnett. Maybe it is the first End and the Death, but there is a really wonderful conversation where Rogel Dorn is basically like, dude, you were used as bait. You suck. And Fulgrim sucks. And that's when he leaves the battle, because he's just like, fuck you, man. Leaves. Words hurt. Leaves. That was the only time that I was like, oh, Fulgrim. You didn't see that what he's spitting facts.
I think that might have been the first wall.
No, because it's when they're actually sieging. Or maybe it is the first wall. Shit. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. It's one of the scenes that I was reading through it, and I was like, I mean, that's mean, man. There's, like, rude. I felt a little bad for Fulgrim in that moment. So yes, I'm excited to read Eidolon. It is a little outside of our idiom, but the character series we've been reading, and we've been the character series has been kind of bouncing all around the place. So
yep, that's true.
That's good. Let's finally read this big purple beast.
It is very purple. Very purple.
I don't even have the collector's edition. Yeah, I don't even have the collector's edition, and my book is purple.
Even the pages they're like a silver purple.
Oh. Mine are white.
White.
Do you want to take us out, Carrie?
Yes, I will. Sorry. So you've listened to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding the High Call's Oath by Gav Thorpe. Very orange book to a purple book. So be sure to join us next time for Eidolon by Mark Collins. We're an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, wh40bookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those good things to the vidcast on YouTube and Spotify, or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. And come join our Discord. We have fun discussions there, and people often share what they're painting. It's a good time. Our site also has articles about adventures and reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crag. And so we're recording this on MLK Day in the United States. And so we all must take a moment to remember that MLK was assassinated by the perpetual Damon Praetonus. After all, he did kill a good man in Memphis. See, now Jen's going to kill me.
Like the fact that the Black Library, like the editors didn't read that and were like, Dan, buddy, this is a little tasteless, my friend.
He said he was a good man. What more do you want? And he feels bad. Damon Praetonus.
Don't forget that he also killed RFK.
Details.
Not Junior, that would be his father.
Right. Yes, RFK Senior.
Now I like rage, flames on the side of my face, heavy breathing. Good night, everyone.
Good night.